Hi, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for joining me. And we're both in North Wales.
Yeah.
Absolutely miserable weather today, so it's quite nice to just be inside having a chat. So good to see you.
Yeah, it's lovely to be.
I guess a good starting point really is I'm really interested in what it is that you actually do. I only know a really basic kind of background, so I'm really interested in what it is that you do. And I guess that's a good starting point.
Yeah, I think you're not the only one that wonders what I do. Sometimes I wonder what I do on a daily basis. So I run a flower farm and a floristry business, but alongside a pedigree flock of sheep on a very small farm at home. And they're two businesses that sort of work together hand in hand and mean that I'm able to make a fairly good living off a really, really small acreage. But it enables me to, because the flowers are sort of bringing in that money really in terms of being able to produce a lot of flowers off a really small space, but it also utilizes all of the things already in the farm. So all of the wool from our sheep, all of the manure from the sheep, go onto the flower farm, and then the pedigree ducks that I breed, they're sort of a fairly rare breed, they're slug control, so it means that we can grow organically and all the elements of the farm work together really well to sort of reduce what we're bringing in as a business, and all of the waste products that we have are sort of being utilised. So lots of different things.
Wow. So flowers, sheep, and ducks then.
Yeah.
So tell me about, so when you said on your farm, can you tell me a bit about your farm and your background?
Yeah. So I'm not from a farming family, and I'm not Welsh either. And yeah, I come from a very, very ordinary family who all have very ordinary, very sensible jobs. And I started farming for sort of about, I think, 12, 13 years ago. We moved into the country, in Lincolnshire, actually, so quite a way away from Wales. And we were just next to a dairy farm, and the cows came up to the fence, and I was really interested as a child, and so sort of went down the road, started milking cows, and this sort of developed into this real sort of passion, for farming and the farming community, and sort of being around farmers, and really loving that lifestyle. And so ended up working on all sorts of different farms, and then moving to Wales. I'm very, very lucky to have a little bit of land, so we've got about 8 acres, and from that we've developed a pedigree flock of sheep. So yeah, it's just grown from the cows coming up to the fence as a child.
Wow. So what did honestly, I have so many different questions going through my head. Like I'd need to think of, right, what path am I going to take? Okay. So if we go back then, so you said that this was like 12, 13 years ago that you've moved, and it just started from literally seeing the cows coming up to the fence. What did you do? What did you do before that? What's your kind of education background? What's that been like? Did you go to
Yeah,
college? Did you go to uni?
yeah.
What was that
So
like?
I started farming when I was about 7. So the timeline is all sort of confusing, and I'm only 20 now.
Wow.
So I've only just left education. I'm autistic with ADHD, which is something I'm really open about. Sort of the other part of my life is research and education on that side of things. So I do a lot of different things, but I kind of did primary school, went into secondary school, and that's when I got my diagnosis. I was really unwell for about 2 years and not in school. And school was not really the place for me. It was a really difficult time. So I didn't really access education for a lot of those sort of secondary school years. And then with really good support, got back into education and did my GCSEs. We were one of the COVID years. And by this point, we were in Wales. And then I really wanted to be a vet. That was what, if you'd asked me as a child what I wanted to be when I grew up, that was absolutely it. And I was so unwell and not in education that I was sort of told that, there's not a lot of hope of you getting that. And then once I got back into school, I'd sort of developed those strategies, had really good support from amazing support staff in school, and went, oh, maybe this is possible. Maybe I can become a vet. And so I did stay and do my A levels. But I did that first year and I didn't do my exams at the end of the first year. And I decided to step away from school, which was the most terrifying decision I have ever made in my life. But yeah, that's sort of where I've ended up with education. So I left school and started a business.
Wow. I'm so thank you for talking about that, because I think when people are struggling within school, and for somebody to be told that what you really want to do when you grow up, you're not going to,
Yeah.
that can be such a tough time to go through, to say the least. So to then be able to get through it, and as you said, that decision, it's not just right, I'm going to step away from school and that's it.
No, if only it was that simple.
Exactly, that's it. And it's, it's not just that decision, it's then the next steps of what kind of comes after.
And I think to be told that what you want to be, you're not going to be able to be, and then to have the confidence and to have worked so hard to get into education, and then to go for it and be brave enough to go for it and say, this is what I want to do. I'm going to be brave enough to try and achieve this goal. And at that time, I was really, do I do A levels? Do I not? What sort of uni? How would I be able to cope with uni?
Yeah.
Being autistic has a big effect on my sort of day-to-day life. How would we manage that? So I sort of had overcome, like looked into all of those obstacles. I'm quite a sort of solution focused person. I quite like to find solutions to things. So to be able to kind of overcome all that and go, yes, I'm going to go for it. And then despite trying my absolute hardest and working myself into the ground, to making adjustments, working with schools to sort of put different support in place, doing everything we can to then step away and go,
Mm.
actually, that dream's not for now. I've got to make a different choice. It was really, really hard. And there was almost like this grief of
Mm-hmm.
kind of feeling stupid for even thinking I ever could. And to make that big, big change to enter from going, okay, this is my plan. This is how I'm going to overcome all these obstacles. This is how my next sort of 5 years look like. I know when I'm going to finish school. I know when I'd finish uni if I did that. Having that structure and plan ahead to then go, actually, that's not the right route and I'm going to do something else. And there just being nothing, just no plan, no structure was really,
Yeah.
really hard.
Yeah. And I think, no, thank you for that. And I think as well that there is that kind of misconception that in order to get to be where you want to be, whatever that looks like, yes, there can be different decisions that you make and opportunities that come up. But sometimes it can be that the foundations are the same, that it can be linear in the sense of the education kind of route. And then you make a decision. Whereas when that's kind of almost taken away from you, that decision's almost taken away from you at an earlier stage as well than you think, you can be derailed already, let alone then thinking of what comes next. And at different stages of life. So
And I think with hindsight, I made that decision and then I was like, yes, this is what I'm going to do. With hindsight, I sort of flailed around for a good 6, 8 months. And I probably should have just done nothing for a while and then start.
yeah. So talk to me about then. So when you did step away from education, and I love how you've just said, stepped away from education and decided to start a business.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that, because we just had a really brief chat before we started recording of starting a business. Just the process of that
Mm.
is an unknown to a lot of people.
Mm.
And again, that there can be the misconceptions of what you need to have or done in order to start a business
Yeah.
and to make it profitable or your kind of career. So talk to me about that then, of how that all came about and how you've ended up having a flower farm, sheep and ducks.
Yeah.
Where's
Yeah, I think when I first left school, I'd grown up in farming, and if I wasn't going to be a vet, I really wanted to be a farmer. And so my biggest thing, I looked into it. I was like, how do I make that happen? And the biggest thing was I needed more land, and that as someone who is not from a farming family, who is not local and not Welsh speaking, ultimately was a big barrier. Kind of living in Wales, it does make some things more challenging. So there was no way that I could access land. And so there was no way that I could expand the farm. And so the whole idea of flowers came in and going, well, my biggest issue is how I get land. So how do I utilize what I've got to make a living? And flowers was that. It meant that I could make a living off a really small area. And we already had the sheep, we already had the ducks. And I didn't want those to just be left. I really wanted them to play a part and have a role in the business as a whole. And so that's where the flowers came in, was sort of all those things could work together really well to make it a profitable business, but also one that was really sustainable, really eco-friendly, which was a big sort of thing that was close to my heart. I really wanted to make sure it was sustainable and had that real role in hopefully helping the planet in the future. So I sort of had the vision, I had all the vision. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I sort of had my big, what I wanted the flower field to look like. I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know how to write a business plan. I didn't even have control of my own bank account. So I was only 18. And so I had to sort of slowly work out all of these things. And so I actually sat down, had this vision, and I sat down on Post-it notes and I wrote down all the problems I could see, all the challenges I had to overcome, all the questions I needed answering, and all the things I had to work out how to do that I could think. And that list I then put on my wall, and it's still in front of me now. And I put it in order of what do I do first. And it was a little bit like my roadmap. And it's a little bit like you're going on a hike and you're going to go through a forest. And at the bottom in the car park, you can see the top of the hill, but you head into the forest and you don't know, and you can't see the top of the mountain anymore. And those Post-it notes was my map and my ability just to take the next step, so that when I couldn't see the peak of the mountain and it felt hopeless and it felt like it was an impossible task, all I had to do was just get up and take the next step.
Wow.
And then the reward of being able to take a Post-it note off and go, oh yeah, I've done that, I've achieved that. And a lot of it was just accessing support that was already there. In Wales, we're so lucky that there is a lot of support there. I've not run a business in other parts of the UK, so I'm not sure what else there is in sort of in England and Scotland. But, there's Business Wales and Farming Connect, and they're all funded organisations that are there to help you run businesses and work out how to make money and learn all sorts of things, from business plans to financial planning to the legal side of things, marketing, social media, all of those things that you don't necessarily have skills for. Generally, there is support there to help you learn those things and help you achieve those goals.
And this is so interesting of how you've gone about it, and it's great that there is that support, because especially as you said, when you're not from that background,
No,
and not necessarily from a family that has started businesses and things, but so many different aspects of that, of not having that background, of being able to get that support. So I've got like just even basic questions. How did you decide then, and what was the process of figuring out what flowers would do well? Did you have a plan of, yes, you wanted a flower farm, but how many steps ahead had you thought of to do what, to cater to who? So how did you?
Looking back, I'm not quite sure. It all sort of came together. I think from seeing other people do it, there's a lot of other people doing the same thing, an awful lot of research. I sort of have that ADHD gene of how hard can it be and what can't you learn off YouTube. And I'm quite a visual learner, and I sort of learn by sort of seeing. So actually utilising sort of YouTube is quite helpful
Yeah.
often. So I think a lot, just a lot of seeing what other people were doing. I was already growing flowers. I'd always grown vegetables and really enjoyed that. And then in lockdown, I sort of gone, oh, you can grow flowers from seed, a bit like you do vegetables. So I sort of gave it a go. And that very quickly spiraled into really liking growing flowers. So I'd already grown stuff. I'd already killed a lot of plants. I had that sort of practical experience, not necessarily the business experience. So more just from learning from other people and loads of research to work out what could and couldn't grow well. And then I knew fairly early on that I wanted to do weddings. I really wanted to do wedding flowers, and I really wanted to do funeral flowers as well. I knew that was something I wanted to do. And then just selling to local people, so selling gift bouquets, and doing flowers for events and things. And there's more things that have come along as the business has developed, but those are initially what I knew I wanted to do, and I knew there was lots of avenues for doing that.
Yeah. Can you remember, I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot here actually, can you remember the first maybe couple of paying jobs that you got, and how they kind of came about? Because I'm just thinking that some listeners might, they might be interested in this kind of area, or something similar of a product-based business, that they know that they have the means to produce that product and they know what it is that they want. to do, but it's just how to kind of get their product to their customers. So can you remember the first couple of jobs of how that came about?
Yeah. I think because I'd grown flowers before and I had been sort of arranging them, and I do remember making my first bouquet and just gifting them to people as gifts. So I do remember the first bouquet I ever made, and I was working just like a Saturday job, and one of the colleagues was going on maternity leave, and I said, "Oh, I'll make some flowers," thinking, how hard can it be? I'll watch a YouTube video, which is exactly what I did. And so that I remember my first bouquet, and that was that one. And then I remember my first wedding as well. I'd started selling in a village shop, just a few bunches a week. And that's still going. They've been supportive all the way through, and I love selling there. And it's actually become quite a good marketing strategy because my flowers are then out there, local people are seeing them. And so it was from that someone had been given a bunch of my flowers, and they said, "Oh, could you do the flowers for our wedding?" And it was a really small wedding in a beautiful church. And so, I did their wedding. They didn't have a colour scheme. They were happy with anything that looked good. And so I remember that. That was really, really, really special.
That almost sounds like the dream first job when you think of wedding flowers, of not having the specific colour theme and things. So I think that's great. I think it's, it's getting into the detail, but not too deep that it can become all consuming, but just to hear those steps of how that kind of happened is all well and good, having that kind of future dream of what you want to do, but it's those kind of little steps, isn't it, between. I want to hear more about pedigree ducks. Where's this come from? So you said that you already had the sheep and the ducks on the farm. Have they always been the kind of pedigree breeds? Where's that come from?
So they're Welsh Harlequin ducks, which are a very rare breed, and obviously a Welsh breed. So they were just, we have always wanted ducks, and we so happen to have moved into Wales with a place that has a stream. And so it was sort of perfect that we wanted ducks. Again, they were a bit of a lockdown project. And so we hatched them from eggs. And then from then we've bred for lots of other people who want the rare breed. So they play a huge role. Slugs are their favourite food. So they control all the slugs basically on the farm and at home, which is ideal. And they work really well. They work very hard.
They earn their keep.
Me too.
That's for sure. So when you think of your kind of business as the whole, let's start on this side actually. What's the hardest part about either being a business owner or in the specific kind of business that you're in? What's the hardest part of it for you?
I think establishing a business has so many challenges, and I think there's always that anxiety of, where is the next paycheck going to come from? And slowly that's become more and more secure and sort of reliable. So I think there's that anxiety of that. And I think also you're having to be constantly sort of flexible with jobs that are coming in, with, someone wants a bouquet tomorrow, can you do that or can you not? Managing what flowers you do have, what you don't have, and thinking, is there a storm coming? Are we going to lose flowers because of that? So can we fulfill the orders that we have got? I think that's constant. I think the hardest bit is having to be constantly flexible to so many moving parts, from different customers to managing the weather, and just managing all the different things we sort of have to fit into the week. So I think, you have to be very, very flexible.
And I think that's quite poignant that we're talking about the impact of that when it's miserable outside. I don't think it's stopped raining for days.
No.
Has that impacted you before then, when you do have something as a product based, that there's so many different variables that are totally out of your control? And I've had a dairy farmer on the podcast before, and we talked about like environmental issues of with the weather and everything. Has that impacted you previously, where the weather just has not played ball and that's impacted negatively? Or how have you
I think we're quite lucky that we haven't had any major disasters, but that's also because I grow about sort of 200 to 250 different varieties of things. So you're spreading the risk massively. Some things will like the cold, some things will like the hot. So you're spreading the risk over that really significantly. And always sort of keeping an eye on the weather to be able to pre-plan. The main thing this time of year is frosts. If we have a really bad frost and we haven't protected the plants, we'll lose all of our stock, and that'll be done. We'll be done for the season then. So that you have to sort of always keep an eye on the weather. And then I think what's enabled us to not have any major disasters is that we have a fantastic network of local growers, but also bigger British growers. So all the flowers we use are all completely and utterly British. Nothing is imported. But we have those really good relationships with much bigger growers who, if we're really desperate, can supplement us and also can supply us during the winter.
Mm-hmm.
We have those sort of avenues to call on when we need it. That means that we can quite confidently commit to weddings and events,
Yeah.
knowing
Yeah.
that we will be able to get the things from somewhere. And then also just being able to educate people. So, for instance, when I do have wedding couples coming to me and they're saying we want delphiniums and they're getting married in January, we have to have a chat about the fact that that's not going to be possible. They're not going to be in season.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also having that knowledge to be able to go, these are the other options, these are the other things that you could have. And so always sort of communicating to clients that we can always fit within a colour scheme and a sort of a theme and a style that they have in mind for their flowers, but not necessarily a very specific list of flowers that they want.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's sort of communicating that, and in that you sort of build that relationship with clients and that trust in you that they know that you will be able to get them what they want, just not necessarily exactly as specifically as maybe you would if you were having imported flowers.
Yeah. Yeah. And how have you found and how have you gone about those relationships? Because I think in any kind of line of work, having a really strong network around you is incredible. But how
Mm.
have you, in a business perspective, how have you managed to kind of curate those relationships with, when you've said like bigger suppliers? How has that come about?
Again, just from chatting to people, I think, just
As
from
simple
building
as that,
those,
isn't it?
yeah, just, yeah, networking, and not even, I suppose, talking to other people and saying, what do you do? How do you manage these things? And they'll say, oh, we work with them and they're really, really good. And so then kind of going to work with them. So generally from recommendations from other people. And then we try and meet up, local flower farmers, we do try and meet up and sort of have those meetups to build those relationships and know what each other are doing and what, we'll all specialize in different things and we'll all have slightly different climates. So normally if one of us hasn't got some, someone else will.
Yeah, yeah. And I get it's taken that kind of competitive nature away, isn't it? That it's not seen as competition, it's seen as something
Yeah.
that can help support,
Our
which
biggest phrase in flower farming, in British flower farming, is collaboration, not competition, and trying to always collaborate rather than feel competitive with each other.
yeah, I like that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
really like that. So so we've talked about the kind of hard aspects
Yeah.
to your business. What's the best thing? What do you love doing, or what's
Yeah.
the best part of your business?
I think it's very cliche, but I do think being able to work with flowers every day is an absolute pleasure, especially when you've grown them, when you've nurtured that plant from a tiny, tiny seed and now it's producing blooms. And then you're creating wedding flowers, for instance, for someone's special day, that you know exactly where they've come from, you know how they've been grown, you've nurtured them from seed to bloom. That is the most incredible feeling. And because our flowers are seasonal, because they are locally grown, they're generally what people would have in their gardens anyway. And so there's this real poignant sort of relationship with flowers, I think, often, where the amount of times people will say to me, oh, my granny used to grow that, or that scent reminds me of my grandparents or my mother or my father. There's this real connection with flowers, and that's incredibly rewarding. And then I think because we are very sort of focused on for working with local people and sustainability, just the fact that people will go out of their way to support us, to come to our workshops, to come to our events, to buy from us at stalls. I think that's really, it's such a humbling feeling of gratitude and just appreciation for local people supporting you as a business, and meaning that you can keep going and keep sort of working on that dream and developing as a business. It's such a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, and that's it. It might be your dream, but it's those others that help kind of build that dream with you
Yeah,
as
they're
well,
making it possible.
that kind of take you there. So by doing this, with everything that happened, and that you wanted to have a flower farm, you wanted to create wedding flowers and funeral flowers. Is there anything either along that process or anything that you do now that you think would surprise people? Do they have an idea of what you do that you just think, if only you knew this,
Yeah.
this would probably surprise you?
Yeah. I think because we're very sustainable as a business, we don't use any floral foam. And any of the mechanics we use in our arrangements are either compostable or reusable. So there's a huge amount of time that goes in sort of behind the scenes to create these mechanics, to screw stuff together, to make frames for things, to find all these solutions that mean that we don't need to use oasis or floral foam. So there's a lot that goes on behind that, and then there's just so much time in picking flowers, in conditioning all of the flowers, making sure they're going to last as long as possible, planning what we've got that week. There's so much behind the scenes that goes on to make it a sustainable business.
Yeah. Has that been something that's been hard for your business, of having that passion of wanting to have a business that is sustainable, that every aspect of that is sustainable? Has that been something that surprised you, of actually the intricacies of that? What does that actually mean? And what does that mean that you therefore can't use if you are to
Yeah,
continue in this way? How have you?
it's definitely more challenging, but I think I have the benefit in some ways of other people have done it before me, so I'm not the first one doing it, and I've never used oasis or floral foam, so I don't
You don't know
know.
what you're missing.
I don't know what I'm missing. So it's quite normal to me. I think it's more just the time investment that it takes. It is ultimately harder and it takes longer. So I think that's the main thing for me. And I do have the benefit of, yeah, I really don't know what I'm missing.
But yeah, I'd just plead ignorance in that side
Yeah,
and just keep going.
yeah.
So when you said before that if somebody was to ask you what you wanted to be when you grew up, it would have been a vet.
Mm.
What do your friends and family think now, when you've gone away from that, still involved in animals in that sense, with the sheep and the ducks, but how have they been that you're a flower farmer? What's their reaction?
I think I'm quite a quiet person in day-to-day life, and I'm not the sort of person that comes home and tells people what I've done in my day. I'm quite private and quiet generally. So I think a lot of people don't know what I do necessarily. They just notice I'm not there or fairly busy. So yeah, I think they've always been very supportive, and not necessarily from a um, offering advice necessarily, but I think just because they don't have any experience, but yeah, they've always been fairly supportive. And I think what's been really nice is when I first started a business, so I'm such an odd one out, in every single room, whether I'm in a corporate room, whether I'm in a room of flower farmers, whether I'm at a business event, I'm normally almost always the youngest there by about 15, 20 years. And so I really stick out, and I don't necessarily have friends from school, or most people my age are all in uni or have sort of day-to-day jobs. They're in a very, very different position to I am, and that's quite lonely. You don't necessarily have anyone to sort of share the ups and downs with. And what's been so wonderful about starting a business is I started off very lonely, but actually, as time's gone on, I've really built up that network of wonderful local people who are running businesses, and really built up that team of support that they know. I think that's the hard thing when you're from a family that's not necessarily business owners. They don't necessarily know how it feels to have a good day or a bad day. But building these connections with local business owners, it's so wonderful because you celebrate your successes together, and you know how it feels when things aren't going well. And there's that real sense of community support that's really lovely.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's one of those aspects that you don't realize that you need until you've got that.
Yeah,
That you don't realize how wonderful that is until you're surrounded by that, and that you are able to. I would assume that there's almost unsaid things between you that they just know, that when something has happened, either good or bad, they're already a couple of steps ahead of knowing what emotionally that
yeah,
means.
yeah.
and perhaps being able to offer advice or support in the most constructive way.
Mm.
So yeah, I think that's, and I hear that a lot from people that do have their own businesses, that because it's such a personal thing to them, that the they have to go through all of the wins, but then also all of the losses as well, and that it is a really, really personal time to go
Yeah.
through that. And as you said, by having all of that support, that just know what you're going
Yeah, I
through,
just know. Yeah, it's lovely.
must be incredible. And I think the other thing that I'm just interested in, because you're obviously so knowledgeable about the stock that you have, and though the background isn't in horticulture,
Mm.
and has that been a hindrance to you, or has that just been something that's actually been a huge positive to you because you've done it on your own terms, you've done your own research, you've not based anything in theory of this is how it should be done, and then questioning why it does or it doesn't do what it should do from theory. So how have you found that?
Yeah, I think one of my most asked questions after I maybe do an event or give a talk somewhere is, how did you train for this? And the answer is I haven't. I've done courses with other flower farmers, very much on the floristry side of things, but not on the growing. And would be the first to admit that my knowledge is very limited if I haven't grown it. Anything I grow, I know what seedling that is. I know what it's going to grow into. Probably know what colour it is. I know what it generally likes. But if I haven't ever grown it, I have absolutely no idea. So my horticulture knowledge in a broader sense is very, very limited. But I think it probably is a benefit. I've never necessarily thought of it as a benefit, but it means that anything that I grow, I've sort of learned from trial and error. And so know how it grows in my environment, in my sort of microclimate. So it probably is in some ways a benefit, but it means that if I'm ever in any sort of horticultural setting, the imposter syndrome is wild.
And there's so many different factors as well, that when you've said, in the different circles um of age and
Yeah.
the background and the experience of things, and I think it's having that confidence. You know what you're doing and you're doing it well, and it's okay to not know everything. I think that's the other thing. Like, it's absolutely fine to not know everything, even about your specialist subject, your specialist area. You don't need to know everything, because if you needed to know everything, you wouldn't have a successful business. So knowing what you need to know, but that can be the tricky part of actually finding out what that is
Yeah.
that you kind of need to know.
Mm.
So you've built this up from an idea into what this is today. What's been either your highlight or a couple of highlights of your career so far?
I think I dreamed of for a very long time of having a flower field. And we do now have that, which is wonderful. It's not without its challenges, not without its frustrations by any means, and it's not all rosy behind the scenes. But yeah, it's really lovely to see that come in. I had some photos back yesterday we decided in the summer when it was looking its best, it was really important to capture it. So we got the photos back yesterday, and it's really lovely to have those memories and to see it all captured. I think a big one for me, I was featured in Farmer's Guardian. And when I started flower farming, I had this real sense of turning my back on farming and turning my back on the community I'd grown up in, the community that I really felt so at home in and was so special to me, and that I wasn't going to go down that route necessarily, and I was going to do it sort of more in a very different way. And I really had this sense that it meant that I wasn't worthy. I couldn't call myself a farmer. I turned my back on people, and that I'd never be respected or listened to for doing something so different. And I even struggled initially really to call myself a flower farmer or even a sheep farmer. I really felt that I didn't deserve that title. And so to see that featured in the Farmer's Guardian, which is a magazine that I grew up sitting at kitchen tables in farms, reading and being so inspired by, to see that featured there, to see my picture of me in my sheep pens with my show sheep with a bunch of flowers in my hand, was the most incredible feeling. And I'd put it out there thinking that I'd get a lot of hate, that I wouldn't be, I didn't know it was going to be featured that week, and I didn't know what the reaction would be from local farmers. I didn't know if they'd laugh at me, if they would think that it was ridiculous that I was featured. And it had gone out in that morning, and by the evening I'd had a few messages, one from the butcher who processes our sheep for us, who I don't even know that well, but is a very, very Welsh, very, very local man of few words, a wonderful man, but someone who I would never expect to take the time to reach out and say, I had no idea you were doing that. It's amazing. And that was just,
Wow.
such a lovely moment to be recognised in a farming magazine and by a local community of farmers. It was really lovely. And then I'm going to be greedy. I do have another one.
Yes, yeah,
uh,
please.
we have a lovely, amazing festival in our local town. It's a music festival. They closed the town centre, and we sold flower crowns there. And we've been there every year. Just as a family, we've always gone and enjoyed it. And for the first time, we sold flower crowns for people to wear. And just to be in the middle of the town square and see people enjoying the music, wearing our flower crowns, having supported us as a business, was just fantastic. It was such a good feeling. It brings a tear to my eye thinking about it, because it was just the fact that people had gone out there and supported us and made that effort to wear our flower crowns, and just to stand there in the middle of this packed town square and see all these flower crowns was just magical.
One of those opportunities that you have to stand and take a moment, take it
Yeah,
all in,
yeah,
because I can imagine the emotions of that,
yeah,
especially when support and community has been something feared to be lacking, that then when
yeah,
it's there with the additional benefit of acceptance
yeah,
is really, really special.
yeah. It's
I
very
can
lovely.
imagine. I can imagine. And I've only seen, I think you've chose well actually with wedding flowers, because some of the photos you must get must be incredible. But some of the photos I've seen of your arrangements are absolutely beautiful, stunning. So yeah, they're lovely. So thinking about, there's, we said before that this podcast was started originally for the athletes that I work with, to give them an idea of different roles out there. It's then grown to, the listeners are from all kind of walks of life, either those from school and not sure what they want to do, through to people that are actually considering a career change, that they don't know that something that they potentially might do as a hobby could be a legitimate career. So I would love to get just a bit of kind of advice from you of what you would pass on to somebody that's hearing this and either has an interest in flowers in general, or even just thinking of starting a business. Have you got any advice that you could pass to others from what you've learned?
I think fake it till you make it is a genuine business strategy. Is my biggest advice. I think you'd be surprised how many people really don't feel like they know what they're doing. And there's so many people in big jobs that are not quite comfortable, who don't quite know what they're doing. And yeah, really, if the more you do it and the more you sort of fake it till you make it, eventually you realize that you're making it and you're not faking it quite so much. Certainly when I started doing weddings, I was crippled. Like any client meeting, I was crippled with anxiety. It terrified me that they'd ask me a question I didn't know how to answer, or that they would know that I was just faking it and making it up as I went along. And slowly, the more I've done, it's now getting to the point where it feels more comfortable. I feel more confident in what I'm doing, and just being able to, kind of make it up as you go along and utilize all that support that's out there. As long as you've got a vision, as long as you know what you're doing, you've got that passion, and it's something that you feel really, really strongly about, that is generally enough sort of motivation and positivity to be able to make something happen.
Yeah, yeah. And is there anything, looking back, that you could have either done or asked for earlier, or is there something that looking back might have helped either smoothen the process or quicken the process, or is everything that you've done led you to where you are? What's
think there's definitely a big element of everything I've done that's led me to where I am. I think, and it's difficult because these things are all developed because of
Yes.
the business going in the direction it has. But I think that local business support has been really helpful and special. And maybe if I had that sooner, that would have been really helpful. And I think also just, having more confidence, I think, especially in pricing. I probably priced too low initially. And then from experience, I've learned that I need to sort of price fairly well. And that's been a huge learning curve. And again, I've only sort of arrived at this point because I've been through the agony of doing jobs where I've way underpriced. And as much as I love my job, there have been moments where I thought I'm working really, really hard for this and actually not really getting paid anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's only because I've been through that I now know that I need to price well.
Yeah. That's it. And there's always hindsight, isn't there? And I'm very much about stacking of experiences, that if you stack those up, that then can help lead you to wherever. And if you take one of those levels out, even if it's in hindsight, then it might have gone in a different direction and that you just don't quite know. I think learning from past experiences is great. But yeah, there is always hindsight of
Yeah.
looking back rose tinted glasses of what it could have been.
I think the other thing is not putting too much pressure on networking. I
Okay.
think it's something that I felt like I needed to do. And actually, I'm autistic. My social skills are appalling. I cannot start a conversation with anybody. And so I found any sort of networking really, really stressful. And what I've realized with time is that I don't necessarily need to go to networking events, but I'm so passionate about what I do that at any opportunity that it comes up, without being in people's faces too much, I do share what I do. And I really get across that passion because that's not difficult. I am very passionate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's only from doing that that a lot of opportunities have come up. You never know what conversation is going to lead to something. And if you're just spreading what you do, if you're truly passionate about it, slowly those opportunities come along rather than necessarily doing forced networking events.
Yeah. I think that is fantastic advice, because the amount of times that I've heard, and me personally, I'll be honest, of the idea of a networking event and walking into a networking event, and it's literally right, go and mingle, go and talk. It can be a really, for some, they can thrive in that environment, but for others it can bring out every insecurity that you have. So I think that's great advice, that networking is important, but find the way that works for you. How can you get your story out there, and find the opportunities that best suit you, being able to tell that story with your passion. So I think there's going to be a lot of people that are with you in that idea. So that's really good to hear. Thank you. Thank you. I love doing these episodes because I do approach guests of, listeners would be really interested. I just want to know myself. So yes, the listeners will be really, really interested. But I get so much from these conversations, and I found it really, really interesting. And thank you for being so open and honest. And the advice that you've given is fantastic. And when you said before that you do a lot of work of talking in schools and further education and things, I can see that that's really, really successful, because I think you telling your story is a great alternative to a traditional route that some feel like they have to go through, either at school or if someone's considering a career change. So thank you. It's been great.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure. And hopefully people have followed the various things that I do. I always feel like it's a little bit confusing for people.
No, it's brilliant. And the first time that I spoke to anybody that breeds pedigree ducks. So thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure.